Lieutenant He stared at the medical scans with growing confusion. After 15 years of studying alien species across the galaxy, he had never seen anything quite like this. The humans, as they called themselves, appeared to have no natural armor at all. Their skin was thin and soft, with no scales, plates, or protective shells. It made no sense. "Director Jai-yun, you need to see this," he called out, adjusting his protective exoskeleton as he moved away from his desk. Like all members of his species, He-jin's body was covered in strong, overlapping plates that protected his vital organs. It was simply how intelligent life evolved, or so they had thought. Director Jai-yun glided across the laboratory on her gravity stabilizers, her own iridescent armor plates shifting with each movement. "What seems to be the problem, Lieutenant?" "Look at these scans from the Earth delegation," He-jin said, pointing to the holographic displays. "No armor plates, no defensive spines, not even a basic exoskeleton. Just this thin outer layer they call skin and some internal support structures made of calcium." Jai-yun's sensor stalks twitched with interest. Surely they must have some other defensive adaptations. Energy shields, perhaps, or internal reinforcement. "Nothing we can detect," He-jin replied. And yet, he pulled up another set of images. These are historical records they provided. Here's a human who survived falling from one of their atmospheric vehicles. Here's another who lived after being impaled through the torso. And this one. He paused, double-checking the translation. This one was pronounced dead for several minutes in freezing water, then simply came back to life. Director Jai-yun moved closer to the displays, her armor plates clicking softly. "Fascinating. How do they survive without protection?" "That's just it," He-jin said, excitement creeping into his voice. "According to their medical data, they just heal. Their bodies repair themselves at an incredible rate. Broken bones knit back together. Damaged organs regrow. Even their neural pathways can rewire themselves after injury." The laboratory's quiet hum was interrupted by an alert from the observation deck. One of the human delegates, a tall female named Sunmei, was requesting permission to enter the research area. Director Jai-yun quickly approved the request. Sunmei walked in wearing the simple cloth coverings humans seemed to prefer. He-jin noticed how exposed and vulnerable she appeared without any natural armor. Yet she moved with complete confidence. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," Sunmei said with a smile. "I wanted to discuss the joint research proposal." "Actually," Jai-yun said, her translator conveying careful politeness, "we were just reviewing some of your species' medical data. I hope you don't mind me asking, but how do your people manage without any natural armor?" Sunmei looked puzzled for a moment, then laughed. The sound made He-jin's sensor stalks twitch in surprise. "I suppose we never really needed it," she said. "Humans are pretty tough even without armor. Just last week, my nephew fell out of a tree, broke his arm, and was back playing with his friends 2 weeks later." He-jin and Jai-yun exchanged looks of astonishment through their sensor stalks, a broken support structure healing in just 2 weeks. Without medical intervention. Besides, Sunmei continued, seemingly unaware of their reaction, "Not having armor makes us more adaptable. We can move quickly, regulate our temperature easily, and fit into all sorts of environments." As Sunmei discussed the research proposal, He-jin found himself taking careful notes not just about the project, but about her casual revelations regarding human capabilities. It seemed that humanity's apparent vulnerability might be hiding something far more remarkable. The question was, what had driven their evolution down such an unusual path? The answer, he suspected, would change their understanding of life itself. Dr. Yunho sat in his research chamber, surrounded by floating holographic displays showing human medical records. Each new file he opened seemed more impossible than the last. He had been studying these creatures for 3 weeks now, and their capabilities still amazed him. "Display case file 147, he commanded. The computer showed him images of a human male who had survived being struck by electrical discharge from the sky, something they called lightning. The human had recovered completely. How is this possible? Yunho muttered, his armored fingers tapping against his desk. His research team had gathered thousands of similar cases, humans surviving extreme cold, terrible injuries, and even poison. They kept living when any sensible species would have died. The door slid open, and his assistant, researcher Dae-sung, entered the lab. "Doctor, you need to see this new data from their sports activities." The younger researcher projected a new set of images. They showed humans running long distances under the hot sun. More remarkably, they showed humans continuing to move even after their support structures, bones, had cracked. "They call this running through the pain," Dae-sung explained. "They can ignore injury signals from their bodies and keep going." Yunho's protective plates shifted in surprise. That should be impossible. Pain signals exist to prevent further damage. No species should be able to simply ignore them. "The humans can," Dae-sung said. "And there's more. Look at this." The next images showed humans lifting heavy weights. Their muscle fibers were actually tearing, and then growing back stronger. Instead of permanent damage, the injury made them more powerful. Their discussion was interrupted by a message from Director Jae-yun. "Dr. Yunho, please report to the main laboratory. Our human guests have arrived for their scheduled examination." In the main lab, Commander Sunmai and 3 other humans waited patiently. They had agreed to undergo some basic physical tests to help the aliens understand human capabilities. "Thank you for coming," Yunho said through his translator. "Today we would like to test your endurance and healing abilities, if you agree." Sunmai nodded. "Of course. What would you like us to do?" The test started simple. The humans ran on testing machines while the aliens measured their vital signs. To everyone's surprise, the humans barely showed signs of tiring even after 2 hours. "Your bodies are actively repairing the muscle damage as you run," Yunho explained, watching the readings with fascination. "It's as if you're healing and moving at the same time." "That's normal for us," Sunmai said, not even breathing hard. "Humans can run for many hours if we need to. Our ancestors used to chase prey until it got too tired to run anymore." Dae-sung's sensor stalks twitched in shock. "You chased prey until it surrendered from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting," another human explained. "It's how we caught faster animals before we invented better weapons." Yunho made careful notes as the tests continued. The humans lifted weights, demonstrated their flexibility, and showed how quickly their small wounds healed. Each new piece of data painted a clearer picture. Humans weren't defenseless at all. Their entire bodies were designed to take damage and recover from it. Later that evening, Yunho prepared his report for Director Jae-yun. "Humans appear to have evolved a completely different survival strategy than any other known species," he wrote. "Instead of preventing damage, they excel at recovering from it. Their bodies are constantly rebuilding themselves. They don't need armor because they simply repair any damage they receive." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "This may be one of the most significant discoveries in xenobiology. We need to completely rethink our understanding of what makes a species successful." Researcher Dae-sung knew something had gone terribly wrong the moment he heard the environmental chamber's alarm. He had been running a standard atmospheric test when the system malfunctioned. Now, the room containing 3 human diplomats was filled with air that would kill most species in minutes. "Emergency override," he shouted at the control panel. The system didn't respond. Through the chamber's clear walls, he could see the humans looking around with mild concern, but nothing more. They weren't dying. They weren't even showing signs of serious distress. Director Jae-yun arrived quickly, her armor plates clicking rapidly in agitation. "Report. What happened?" "The chamber malfunctioned," Dae-sung explained, his sensor stalks trembling. "The atmosphere inside is now 60% nitrogen, 30% oxygen. with trace amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases. It's completely toxic. That's just Earth air, said a calm voice behind them. They turned to see Commander Sunmai entering the laboratory. It's what humans breathe normally. The room fell silent except for the still blaring alarm. Inside the chamber, the human diplomats were now sitting down, looking more bored than worried. You breathe nitrogen? Director Jai-yun asked in disbelief. The poison gas. It's not poison to us, Sunmai explained. Our atmosphere back home is mostly nitrogen. We need it to live. Before anyone could respond, Administrator Ta-1 from the Galactic Security Council rushed into the laboratory. His polished armor plates reflected the emergency lights as he moved. I was informed of a critical safety breach, he announced formally. Are the humans? He stopped, staring at the scene before him. The supposedly endangered humans were now playing some kind of card game inside the toxic chamber. As you can see, Administrator, Director Jai-yun said carefully, the humans are perfectly fine. It seems what we consider a deadly atmosphere is their normal environment. The security administrator's sensor stalks waved in confusion. But our reports show their planet has extreme temperature variations, powerful storms, and regular geological upheavals. How do they survive without protective armor or atmospheric shields? We adapt, Sunmai said simply. Humans live in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. We survive high in mountains where the air is thin and in valleys below sea level. Our bodies adjust to what's around us. Administrator Ta-1 turned to Dr. Yun-ho, who had just entered the laboratory. Doctor, what are the implications of this? Yun-ho looked at his data tablet. It means, Administrator, the humans are far more durable than we imagined. They don't just survive in conditions that would kill other species. They thrive in them. Their bodies actually become stronger when faced with hardship. The administrator was silent for a long moment. This changes everything we thought we knew about survival capabilities. The Security Council will need a full report. Inside the chamber, one of the human diplomats finally looked up from their card game. Can we come out now? We're getting hungry, and it's almost time for lunch. Director Jai-yun quickly ordered the chamber opened. As the humans walked out, completely unharmed, she exchanged meaningful looks with Administrator Ta-1. This accidental test had revealed more about human capabilities than weeks of careful research. Perhaps, the administrator said quietly, we should reconsider what we think of as hostile conditions. It seems our new human friends might have much to teach us about true resilience. The emergency meeting room of the Galactic Security Council was filled with representatives from 20 different species. Administrator Ta-1 stood at the center, his armor plates dulled with stress marks as he delivered the grave news. The Ravager swarms have adapted, he announced. They have developed new weapons that can pierce even the strongest natural armor. 3 colony worlds have already fallen. The room erupted in worried discussions. The Ravagers were mechanical insects that evolved from ancient mining drones. They consumed everything in their path to build more of themselves. Until now, the various species' natural armor had provided some protection against their attacks. Commander Sunmai sat quietly in her chair, listening. As the only human representative present, she noticed how strange she looked among all these armored beings. But right now, that difference might be exactly what they needed. The Ravagers are targeting our protective plates, a heavily armored general explained. They inject an acid that melts through our strongest defenses. We cannot fight them directly anymore. Sunmai stood up. Then perhaps it's time to try something different. All sensor stalks in the room turned toward her. Humans don't rely on armor. We adapt. We heal. We keep fighting even when we're hurt. Administrator Ta-1's sensor stalks moved with interest. What are you suggesting, Commander? Let humans leave the defense, Sunmai said firmly. Our soldiers can fight in conditions that would kill your troops. We can keep moving even when injured. And most importantly, we don't have any armor for the Ravagers to target. The room fell silent. Dr. Yuno, who had been invited to provide scientific insight, spoke up. Commander Sunmai is correct. Human healing abilities are remarkable. They can recover from injuries that would be fatal to our species, and their bodies actually become stronger after recovering from damage. One of the armored generals shifted uncomfortably. But humans are so exposed. How can they fight without protection? Sunmi smiled. Let me show you. She walked to the room's environmental controls and adjusted the temperature. The room became uncomfortably hot for the armored species, but she showed no discomfort. This is nothing for a human, she explained. We can fight in burning heat or freezing cold. We don't need special equipment to survive extreme conditions. Our bodies adjust on their own. She continued, the Ravagers are winning because they found a way through your armor. But humans, we're different. We're not protected because we don't need to be. We're tough all the way through. Administrator Taiwan studied her carefully. You believe human soldiers could survive where our forces cannot. I know they can, Sunmai replied. And I have a plan. But you'll have to trust us, even if our methods seem strange to you. Dr. Yunho added, based on my research, humans might be our best hope. They can endure conditions that would shut down our systems. They can heal from injuries that would deactivate our soldiers. They are, in many ways, the perfect counter to the Ravager threat. Administrator Taiwan was silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, very well, Commander Sunmai. Tell us your plan. As Sunmai began to explain her strategy, the other representatives listened with growing interest. Perhaps these strange, unarmored humans were exactly what they needed to turn the tide of war. Dr. Yunho stared at his laboratory results in amazement. After 3 months of intensive research, he had finally understood what made humans so special. The answer was both simple and extraordinary. Director Jai Yun, he called out, his voice filled with excitement. I've found it. I know why humans developed without armor. Director Jai Yun moved quickly to his research station. The emergency of the Ravager attacks had made their research even more important. Show me, she said. Yunho displayed a complex series of images showing human cells. Look at this. When human tissue is damaged, it doesn't just heal, it becomes stronger. Their bones don't just repair fractures. They grow back denser at the break point. Their muscles don't just recover from injury. They'd rebuild themselves to be more powerful. But we knew this already, Jai-Yun said, her sensor stalks showing confusion. Yes, but we didn't understand why, Yunho explained. He changed the display to show a comparison between human DNA and that of other species. Every other intelligent species evolved some form of armor because it was the fastest way to survive. But humans took a different path. He pointed to specific sections of the human genetic code. Their entire bodies are designed to be rebuilt. They don't need armor because they're made to take damage and recover stronger than before. It's not just their healing, it's their whole biology. The door opened, and Commander Sunmai entered with Administrator Taiwan. They had come to check on the research progress, hoping it might help in the fight against the Ravagers. Commander, you're just in time, Yunho said. I've discovered something remarkable about your species. He showed them a new set of images. Look at how human neurons repair themselves after injury. Your brains can actually create new pathways around damaged areas. Even your blood carries special cells that rush to repair any injury. You're not just tough. You're designed to become tougher with every challenge you face. Sun Li nodded. That makes sense. We have an old saying on Earth, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Now I understand why. Administrator Taiwan moved closer to examine the displays. How does this help us against the Ravagers? The Ravagers win by finding weaknesses in armor and defenses, Yunho explained. But humans don't have those weaknesses because they don't rely on armor at all. Their entire body is their defense system, and it gets stronger the more it's challenged. He brought up combat simulation data. The Ravagers' weapons are designed to pierce armor and disable protection systems. But against humans, Those weapons are much less effective. You can't disable a defense system that's built into every cell of their bodies. Director Jai Yun's sensor stalks moved with excitement. This changes everything we thought we knew about survival strategies. Humans didn't evolve armor because they developed something far more powerful: the ability to adapt and grow stronger from almost any challenge. There's more, Yunho added. This ability to adapt and grow stronger, it's not just physical. Humans show the same pattern in their behavior, their technology, their societies. They don't just survive challenges. They learn from them and become better. Administrator Ta Wan turned to Commander Sunmei. Your species truly is remarkable, Commander. Perhaps this is exactly what we need to defeat the Ravager threat. Sunmei smiled. We're ready to help. After all, becoming stronger through adversity is what humans do best. Captain Min Seok stood before the holographic display in the war room, studying the movements of the Ravager swarms. Around him, representatives from various alien species watched as he explained the human strategy for defending the outer colonies. The Ravagers expect their enemies to rely on armor and defensive positions. Min Seok explained, "We won't do either of those things. Instead, we'll use what humans do best: adapt and overcome." Officer Su Jin, his tactical specialist, stepped forward. She pointed to several locations on the map. We've identified the Ravagers' main production facilities. They're in environments that would kill most armored species: extreme heat, crushing pressure, and toxic atmospheres. But not humans, Min Seok added. We can operate in all those conditions. Our bodies will adjust to the pressure. We can handle the heat. The toxic air won't stop us. Administrator Ta Wan looked concerned. But without armor, how will your soldiers survive direct combat with the Ravagers? By using the Ravagers' strength against them, Su Jin explained. She displayed images of the new human combat suits. These aren't armor. They're environmental suits designed to enhance our natural abilities. They don't try to stop damage. Instead, they help us recover from it faster. Dr. Yunho, who had been invited to advise the military council, spoke up. The suits are based on our research into human biology. They support the body's natural healing processes and help regulate temperature. They're everything that traditional armor isn't. Min Seok continued with the battle plan. We'll send in small teams of human soldiers. They'll move fast and strike hard. When the Ravagers adapt to hurt us, we'll adapt right back. Every injury we survive will make us stronger. The alien representatives watched as he showed simulations of the planned attacks. The human tactics seemed strange to them. No fixed positions, no defensive formations, just constant movement and adaptation. This goes against all traditional military doctrine, one of the alien generals said. That's exactly why it will work, Su Jin responded. The Ravagers have learned to defeat your traditional tactics. They've never faced anything like human warfare. Min Seok pointed to the latest reports from the front lines. The Ravagers expect their enemies to retreat when injured. They expect us to fall back when our defenses fail. But humans don't think that way. We advance when we're hurt. We fight harder when we're wounded. We become more dangerous the more damage we take. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The very things that made humans seem weak to other species, their lack of armor, their exposed flesh, their reliance on healing rather than protection, might be exactly what they needed to win this war. We'll need your help, Min Seok said to the alien representatives. Your ships can transport our forces. Your sensors can track the Ravagers. But the actual fighting, that has to be done by humans. Administrator Ta Wan looked at the battle plans one more time. Very well, Captain Min Seok. You have the Council's approval. When can your forces be ready? Min Seok smiled. We're ready now. Humans are always ready to face a challenge. After all, that's how we grow stronger. Lieutenant He Jin watched from the observation ship as the human forces moved into position. Even after all his research, he still found it hard to believe what he was seeing. The humans wore only light environmental suits as they approached the Ravager hive, moving through terrain that would kill most species instantly. The main Ravager facility sat in the heart of a volcanic region. Rivers of molten rock flowed around it, and the air was filled with toxic gases. The armored species of the galaxy couldn't fight here. Their protective plates would overheat and fail within minutes. But the humans pressed forward. Captain Min Siak led the first team, moving quickly through the deadly landscape. Their bodies were already adapting to the extreme heat and pressure. Through his monitoring equipment, Ho Jin could see their internal changes happening in real time. First contact with Ravager forces, Min Siak's voice came through the communication system. The mechanical insects swarmed toward the human teams, their weapons ready to pierce armor that wasn't there. The battle that followed was unlike anything Ho Jin had ever seen. When the Ravagers struck the humans, they did cause injuries, but the humans kept fighting. Their bodies began healing even as they moved, their strength seemingly growing with each wound. "They're adapting to our biology," Officer Su Jin reported from her position. "But we're adapting faster. Push forward." The Ravagers' confusion was clear in their behavior. Their weapons and tactics were designed to defeat armor and protective systems. Against humans who had neither, they struggled to find effective attacks. Commander Sunmi's voice came through the command channel. "All teams, execute Operation Phoenix now." The humans began their main assault. They moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but were carefully planned. When one soldier was injured, 2 more would take their place while the first recovered and came back stronger. "Remarkable," Administrator Taiwan said, watching from beside Ho Jin. "Every time the Ravagers adapt to hurt them, the humans adapt right back. They're not just surviving. They're getting more effective as the battle continues." The turning point came 3 hours into the battle. The Ravagers had altered their weapons 7 times, trying to find a way to stop the humans. But with each change, the human forces adapted and pressed forward. Their bodies learned from each injury, becoming more resistant to the Ravagers' attacks. "Central hive in sight," Min Siak reported. His vital signs showed multiple injuries, but his voice was strong. Moving to plant the demolition charges. The Ravagers mounted a desperate defense of their hive. They swarmed the human forces in overwhelming numbers, but they couldn't understand what they were fighting. Every human they wounded returned to battle stronger than before. Every attack they developed was overcome by the humans' natural adaptability. Ho Jin watched in amazement as the human forces reached the heart of the hive. Their bodies had changed during the battle, becoming more resistant to heat, more efficient at healing, more capable of enduring the toxic atmosphere. "Charges set," Min Siak announced. "All teams, fall back." The explosion that destroyed the Ravager hive shook the entire region. As the human forces withdrew, Ho Jin could hardly believe the data his instruments were showing. The soldiers were already recovering from their injuries. Their bodies were actually stronger than when the battle began. The Ravagers had finally met an enemy they couldn't defeat, a species that grew stronger from every attempt to destroy it. 1 month after the victory over the Ravagers, Director Jai Yun stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council. Representatives from every known species had gathered to hear her presentation on the lessons learned from the conflict. "We have always believed that survival meant having the strongest defenses," she began, her armor plates gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The humans taught us that we were wrong." The giant display behind her showed images from the battle. Human soldiers fighting without heavy armor, their bodies adapting and growing stronger with each challenge they faced. The Ravagers' defeated hive, destroyed by enemies they couldn't understand. "Our research team, led by Dr. Yunho, has completed their study of human biology," Jai Yun continued. "What we discovered will change our understanding of life itself." Dr. Yunho stepped forward. His own armor plates showed signs of wear from long hours in the laboratory. "Humans evolved without armor because they developed something far more valuable," he explained. "The ability to adapt, to heal, and to grow stronger from adversity. The chamber's holographic systems displayed detailed images of human cellular structure. Every part of their bodies is designed to rebuild itself, Yunho said. They don't just recover from damage. They learn from it. Their bones grow stronger after breaks. Their muscles become more powerful after injury. Their minds create new pathways around damaged areas. Administrator Tadwan rose to speak. This knowledge has already begun to change how we think about defense and survival. Several worlds have requested human advisors to help redesign their military strategies. Commander Sun Mai, now promoted to general, took the platform. She looked small among the armored aliens, but everyone in the chamber knew the strength that lay beneath her seemingly fragile exterior. We humans never saw our lack of armor as a weakness, she said. We evolved to be tough all the way through. Every challenge we face makes us stronger. Every obstacle we overcome teaches us something new. Lieutenant He Jin, who had watched the humans from their first arrival through the final battle, shared his observations. The Ravagers failed because they couldn't understand what they were fighting. They kept looking for armor to pierce, defenses to break. They never realized that the humans' greatest strength was their ability to recover and adapt. Director Jai Yun displayed her final slides. They showed humans living and working on worlds that other species had thought uninhabitable. This is the future we see now. Humans teaching us how to be stronger without armor, how to adapt instead of just defending ourselves. The Council voted unanimously to establish new research programs studying human adaptability. Schools across the galaxy began teaching what they called the human way, the path of growing stronger through facing challenges. We thought humans were vulnerable because they had no armor, Jai Yun concluded. Now we understand that they had no armor because they never needed it. Their entire species evolved to be virtually indestructible, not by avoiding damage, but by becoming stronger every time they were damaged. As the assembly ended, Sun Ma smiled at her alien colleagues. Remember, she said, the next time you see a human and think they look fragile, that's exactly what the Ravagers thought too.